It's biology with Mr. B. Biology with Mr. B. That's me! Hello everybody, welcome. This is a GCSE revision video about the topic of photosynthesis. So my plan today is I'll run you through the reaction and the sort of specifics about photosynthesis. I'm going to link that as best I can to the sort of adaptations, in particular within the leaf, to maximise photosynthesis. A little bridge to limiting factors, because that's a nice link to some of the practical work. Inverse square law and uses of glucose, I'm probably not going to get a chance to in a 20-minute video like this, but please use my revision guide to remind yourselves of these ideas. And I do want to focus a decent chunk of time on the idea of transpiration, water movement within the plant, because that's usually where students struggle the most on GCSE type questions to do with this topic. Right, so let's go straight into the reaction. So photosynthesis is a reaction that takes place within chloroplasts. Carbon dioxide and water react together. Don't know what I put an arrow there for. And they react and produce glucose and oxygen. The first thing to appreciate here is you do need to know the symbol equation for glucose. It is C6H12O6. 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 Keep repeating it in your head, it will become second nature. Now, I just want to stress this, because I have seen a couple of 1 markers to do with this before. Think chemistry. These left hand side and right side of my chemical reaction are no longer balanced. But to balance photosynthesis is brilliant. It's the number of the beast. Just think photosynthesis as the devil, because it's 6, 6, 6, and that fully balances it. Those who know their respiration will recognise this as literally the opposite reaction of aerobic respiration. So a couple other things to bear in mind. We absolutely need this to take place in the chloroplast, and it's the pigment chlorophyll that is actually required for this to take place. Because chlorophyll absorbs light energy. And it uses that light energy to kickstart this reaction with, of course, this is a chemical reaction taking place inside a living thing, therefore it must be catalysed by enzymes to speed it up. Because the light energy is being transferred into the reaction, we say that photosynthesis is endothermic. Again, you'll recognise that as the opposite of respiration, where the energy comes out, transfers out of the reaction into the environment, and we say respiration is exothermic. For this one, the energy is transferred into the reaction from the environment, so endothermic. Right, so clearly, if I want a lot of photosynthesis, I need a really high amount of carbon dioxide. I want the presence of water. So ideally, we can't be in a dry environment. A drought isn't very good for photosynthesis. I want as much chlorophyll in my leaf cells as possible. And I want as much light as possible. So the greater the light intensity, the better. But also, as an enzyme-controlled reaction, I also want the optimum temperature. If we are working with a reaction or a practical, which is demonstrating or measuring photosynthesis, these factors can all be limiting. These are all reasons why maybe a photosynthesis experiment stops increasing its rate, even if you'd expect it to continue increasing. I'll just very quickly demonstrate what I mean. If we had on the x-axis our independent variable of light intensity, and we were just measuring the rate of photosynthesis, you might remember doing a practical counting bubbles. Yeah, or maybe measuring the volume of oxygen using a gas syringe. That's a much more accurate way to do it. We'd expect, the greater the light, more photosynthesis. You'd expect a reaction like that, wouldn't you? But in reality, it will probably do that at the start, and then eventually it'll just level off. And they always level off because of a limiting factor. Maybe there's not enough carbon dioxide. Maybe there's not enough chlorophyll. Maybe there's not enough enzymes. Maybe the temperature's limiting. And there's only so much reactions you can do per second. So I am going to be doing some videos about the required practicals at a slightly later date, more specific, and the photosynthesis one is a really, really nice one. There's a lot of variables you can change within it, and I'll look at those ideas limiting factor a bit more then. But for now, let's see if I can draw a leaf. This is generally quite challenging for me. Right, so I know I need a top bit, I need an epidermal layer. Good start. I need a layer of palisade mesophyll cells. These are like the rectangles, these are the big surface area packed full of chloroplasts. Look, I'm going to draw lots of chloroplasts, all green and such. The light's not going to miss them, is it? Underneath that, I need a spongy layer. I'm still going to do green cells because these are still mesophyll cells, but they're just a little bit more spongy. You'll see a few little air gaps between these ones. There needs to be some sort of tubing coming in. So I'll draw that sort of here. Let's do a blue tube next to a red tube. Yeah, multicoloured. So I'll just give the impression that's going out the leaf as well. And we need another lovely epidermal layer on the base, but this epidermal layer is going to have a couple of gaps. I'm going to draw a couple of special cells there as well. Okie dokie. Tell you what, for me, that is a kick-ass leaf. Right, let's go. So we are looking at this blue layer top and bottom. That is your epidermal tissue. It is there as that sort of barrier. Plants don't have skin, but they have an epidermis. It's a lovely protective layer. Underneath that, at the top of the leaf, we have the palisade mesophyll cells. If you see the word mesophyll, that means they've got chloroplasts and they're doing lots and lots of photosynthesis, which you'd want at the top of your leaf, wouldn't you? Because that's where all the light hits. So that's where all the energy is going to come. That's where you want your CO2 and your water to arrive. Underneath that, this spongy layer is still green, so it's still mesophyll, but it's called spongy mesophyll. Its advantage is the fact that we've got all these air gaps. Perfect for carbon dioxide and oxygen to do gas exchange with these cells. The cells need CO2 and the cells are producing oxygen by photosynthesis. So that gas exchange needs to take place, so we need air spaces to do that. The bottom layer, again, is another epidermal layer, so protection, and these parts here, these little gaps, these little pores, they are known as stomata. And clearly, the stomata is where gas exchange is taking place between the environment and the leaf. Gases can flow in, gases can flow out. So gases like oxygen, CO2, and water vapour. And water vapour. And that's going to link nicely to an idea in a little bit. So this is really good, lots of different adaptations here. Yes, protective layers are great, but the palisade right at the top. Massive surface area, lots of chloroplasts, maximising photosynthesis. The spongy layer, still got the chloroplasts, still doing photosynthesis all the way through the leaf, but now we've got the air spaces to allow CO2 and oxygen to do gas exchange. The stomata allows that oxygen to be released, allows more CO2 to constantly diffuse down a concentration gradient by diffusion. So really good adaptations. These little cells, by the way, by the stomata, they are called guard cells. And they can open and close the stomata depending on whether the plant or needs to do gas exchange or not. And the issue there is actually usually to do with water vapour. If water vapour can exit the leaf, that could make a plant lose all its water. If a plant loses its water, it will begin to wilt. And that's not very useful. So how would you stop a plant losing water? Close the stomata. Then the water finds it very difficult to get out. So the tissues are not labelled, because they're the ones I want to focus on, are the little red and blue tubes that are going into the leaf. And these tubes go all the way from the leaf, top of the tree, and all the way down, all the way to the roots. The little red one, I'm going to say, is my phloem tube. Phloem transports sugars. So all the glucose that's made in photosynthesis, the phloem will transport it from the leaf all the way to the rest of the plant to wherever the sugars are needed for respiration. That process is called translocation. So trans, sort of like the idea of like that changing, and then location, obviously changing location in this case. Translocation. My blue tube represents the xylem. And the xylem transports water. Now, the xylem will only transport water up the plant because the plants can only take in water by osmosis at the roots. So the xylem must always move water upwards in one direction. Okay, so before I get into all things xylem and water vapour and stomata and things to what we call transpiration and the transpiration stream, I'm just going to throw a grade 9 question out there. And my grade 9 question, I'm going to just focus on this top layer where all the mesophyll cells are. Why does photosynthesis, or at least why does increased photosynthesis lead to increased growth in the plant? This question is grade 9 standard. And if you get something similar to this, trying to link photosynthesis and growth, it will be 4, 5 or 6 marks. Because there's a lot of biology that we can link to this. So just bear with me with this, but this is a really key concept of all things paper 1. And you can actually link almost all paper 1 topics to this one idea. So firstly, if I just sort of draw the idea, well not draw, bullet point the ideas around it. Firstly, more photosynthesis means more glucose produced. More photosynthesis is more glucose. That's what we make in photosynthesis. So if we've got more glucose, we can do more respiration. If we've got more respiration, we're going to release more energy. If you're releasing more energy, well then you're going to have more energy to synthesize, that means build, large molecules such as amino acids. And amino acids are what make proteins, and protein offer growth. Whew. So a really, really big linked idea and linked question there in the middle. Photosynthesis does lead to growth, but it's not straightforward. It's not a 1 mark question. You have to link photosynthesis to respiration, link that to energy release, link that to the building of large molecules, amino acids, into proteins, and have the idea that proteins offer growth and repair. Whew, that's grade 9 for you. Good luck with that one. So I'm going to try fit this idea in to several other of my paper 1 videos, because I promise you, if you actually look for this idea of energy and growth, it's everywhere. We can link it to enzymes, because if enzymes don't work in digestion, then obviously you get less food, which means you have less glucose, so less energy, less respiration, honestly, we can put this into any idea. Energy and growth go hand in hand, and we can link it throughout paper 1. Anyway, so I said we'd now look at the idea of transpiration and the transpiration stream. So I'm going to do my very best to draw a plant. So this could end really badly. So, roots, nice big stem, and coming off the stem, let's see if I can draw a leaf without being that embarrassing. Ooh. That's alright for me. I'll take that, hands down. Right, here goes. Although if you look at it in context, that's the weirdest looking plant I've ever seen. Right, so, losing my pens. So, if I take you on a journey of water moving up the plant, you'd presume I'm going to start with the roots. You know, water moves into the roots by osmosis, it moves up the stem via the xylem, goes into the leaf, where it'll be used by the leaf, and maybe eventually it'll come out the leaf via the stomata. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Start where it enters, but that's the wrong thing to do. The reason why water moves is because of the action of the leaf. So we actually need to do this journey backwards. We have to start at the stomata, at the leaf. So let me draw a little hole, little pores that are my stomata. At the stomata, transpiration occurs. Transpiration is simply the loss of water vapour by evaporation through the stomata. The loss of water vapour by evaporation through the stomata. That's all transpiration is. So transpiration and evaporation, we kind of put them hand in hand. Because transpiration specifically is water vapour at the leaf through the stomata. So if the leaf has now lost water, that water needs to be replaced. So the really cool thing about water is that it's really, really sticky, it's very cohesive. The water molecules stick together. So if you've got water molecules next to each other and some of them leave, others will be pulled along to replace those that were once there. So this is where I can start to bring in my xylem vessel. And I'm just going to do my xylem vessel as just a blue line. This is my xylem vessel all the way through the stem and into the leaf. So water moves up the xylem to replace the water lost by transpiration. The key term there is that you're mentioning to the examiner, you know the water's moving up the xylem, not the stem. I know it is going through the stem, but we can be specific with our plant tissue, xylem. And like I said, because water's sticky, for all the water that moves upwards, well, it'll just drag other water molecules up and up and up. And think what that does to the roots. If all the water's moved up the xylem, now there's no longer water in the root cells. There's a low water concentration in the roots, which means the soil might have a higher water concentration than the roots. So water gets to move in by osmosis. So the water moves into the roots by osmosis. That's your key term. If you're explaining that properly, you then give a definition, wouldn't you? From a high water concentration to a lower water concentration across a partially permeable membrane. And it's doing that to replace the water which has moved into the stem. That's moved into the xylem, I should say, actually. May as well make that specific. Okay. So water's moved into the roots by osmosis to replace the water moved into the xylem. This journey of water is known as the transpiration stream. And water will only move if this top bit happens. So you get loads of transpiration if it's hot, if it's dry, and if it's windy. Because if it's hot, there's going to be more evaporation. If it's dry, there's going to be a greater concentration gradient between water vapour in the leaf compared to outside. There'll be hardly any water in the environment, so water will move out by diffusion. Because again, water vapour is a gas, so it just moves by diffusion out the stomata. If it's windy, any water vapour that does move out of the stomata just gets blown away, so you're maintaining a steep concentration gradient. In other words, if you want transpiration, you want good clothes drying weather. So, thank you very, very much for your time. I'm up to my 20 minutes, so thank you very much. I'm going to leave it there. Please use my revision booklet to look at those other ideas, in particular some of the more practical related, things like the inverse square law, which is a little bit different. Uses of glucose is some really nice sort of straightforward bullet point learning of what we can do with that glucose produced. So thanks very much, take care, see you again soon, bye bye.